Hello everyone, welcome back to the second part of this season finale of Behind the Scenes with Bayut and dubizzle. We just had so much to talk about with Haider that we could not contain it in one part. So here it is, the second one. Enjoy. So I don't know if I've ever told you this. I used to compete with you coming to the office. So it's not 9, then it's like 8:30. I think one day I came in at 8. You were still in the office. So I called up our office boy, Safir, and I was like, what time does Haider Sab come to the office? And he honestly, he was like, I come in at 7 and usually Haider Sab is here.
If I'm in the zone, then it's very difficult to get out of it, right?
True.
Right. So, and
it's
that
deep
this
work,
is probably why I also don't sleep much, because there's something is running in the head. And so then when I wake up, I'm like, I'm going to sit over here and I'm probably going to do the same thing. And I always find the office just, I cannot work from home. So if we talk about this topic of, which is, everybody is entitled to their own preference, and I have respect for whoever wants to do whatever. But for me personally, I have to be in an office environment.
Right.
And why is that? One is, I need my space to think. So I need to kind of remove everything. I'll tell you why I developed like this opinion, or why I feel like this. When I was back in the US, I used to constantly get, I had to code, and I've done a lot of coding myself, and
Right.
I had to code, and I would just have a barrage of people just coming in, sometimes asking me this, sometimes asking me that. What do you think about this? Well, I need help with this and all that, and I could never find that time to do it. So one day I went to my manager and I said, I need to code, I need to finish this. So for the next 4 or 5 days, I'm just going to work from home.
Okay.
And I'll do it for however long I need to do it so that I can get it finished. Because at work, there's just too many disturbances. So he said, yeah, okay, sure, no worries. See you whenever you're done. I said, okay, fine. And I started working from home. And, and I was working, and then I realized nobody thought that I was actually working. So, my son would walk up to me and he's like, take me out. And, and so then what I did was I said, okay, during the day it's very difficult. So what I'll do is, once everybody is in bed, like 9 p.m. So from 9 to 5, I'll code. So I actually used to do that. So
wow.
From 9 to 5 in the morning, I code, and then I go to sleep. And then after 4 or 5 days, I was like, I need to talk to people. Like, like sometimes even I would get stuck, right?
Yeah.
And I need to talk to somebody. And that's when I think it was early days for me. So I just kind of developed this.
And just going back in time, is there anything that you would have done differently if you think about it right now?
It's an interesting question. I mean, I'm not going back in time. I always find this question, like, it's difficult. Like obviously, like you're like, oh, if I go back in time, then, now I know more from experience, so I wouldn't do certain things.
Right.
I would skip those things.
I think you mentioned you would have chosen to start up this company much sooner.
For me, I think whenever it happened,
Yeah.
was the best possible time that it happened, right? So I moved here after having worked for 15 years. So you could possibly, somebody could say, okay, or maybe, even a younger version of me could say, oh, I should have done this, 5 years sooner.
Right.
So after 10 years of experience, right? But I think what I've realized over time is that all of those years of experience, when I was in those years and working, like, it was hard for me to see the value of those. Now I do see the value of that, right? Like
Right.
how do you, and then that's really helped me with one thing, which is scale. Like you asked about scaling, right? Like it was very clear to me, now it's very clear to me that you need to institutionalize, you need to kind of build stronger departments. And as you get bigger, the challenge is not so much that one is you need to have departments. The challenge is really, how do these departments work with each other, right? It's almost, you can think like these are complex organisms that kind of have to coexist. And then you have to find the best ecosystem where all of them thrive, right? So big organizations can teach you that. Successful big organizations can teach you that. And you start now, I can easily see what part culture plays in this.
Right.
I can see what part, other things play in this. Now, had I not gone through that experience, and when I was going through that experience, it might have even seemed frustrating at a certain point, right? Because obviously what happens is that, and I think it's very natural that when you run into these, like for example, for me, like I was, as I mentioned earlier, I was always like a seeker, go-getter. Like I wanted, next challenge, right? And sometimes it can become frustrating because your manager is telling you, please, finish this, right? Or please just focus on this, and you're like, oh, I already understand it. Like, give me the next thing. But that discipline is very important, right? Right. And like I would go and tell the younger me, it's going to be all right. Don't be so impatient, right? Just but always have ambition and work hard, and I think the rest sorts itself out.
Yeah. Right. And I think even the work culture with US and where we are right now, is there anything that you sort of miss from there?
What we have over here is very similar, very, very similar to what I grew up in. Okay. I mean, I don't know how, frankly, I haven't worked anywhere else over here, so I don't know what the rest of the country or the region or, looks like. But what I can tell you is this is very close
to
the culture in the US, the work culture that I grew up in.
Right. Yep. And if there's one thing that you'd like to tell our employees, what would that be?
Like seek hard challenges, and don't be shy. When asking for those things, go talk to your manager, and we will try our best to provide those opportunities, right? But do seek those challenges because that's the only way we're going to grow, right? Yeah. Because with the growth of those people, the company will grow, right? My job is to make sure, to the best of our ability, that the entire management team makes sure that we can continue to provide those. There's not being very, very open with you over here. Like it's not like we have an infinite number of opportunities. We kind of have to also play within the sphere that we are. Like as I said, we're not going to go from this size to this size overnight. We need
it's that ecosystem.
We need to kind of expand that a little bit, right? So we kind of have to balance it with that. But certainly, I think it's always a pleasure to see people who kind of go and ask for, to be challenged. Right? Yeah.
So just a few more, but these are like just about you.
Yeah, sure.
Do you have an idol that you looked up to or still look up to?
Like I'll share with you. I was at the Dubai airport one day, and I was flying. I can't remember where. It's a few years ago, and I was outside. I had to buy a lock for the suitcase, and I walk into the shop, and there's this person in a wheelchair, and it's Steve Wozniak.
Oh.
Okay. And I'm like, that's Steve Wozniak, and he's the co-founder of Apple. Right. And I have, so this, hopefully some of you also know this, I'm not a selfie guy, okay? I'm not a social media person, right? That is the only time in my life I actually walked up to him and I said, I'm sorry, I've never done this, but I have to take a selfie with you. And, he's like, yeah, let's do it. Okay, super nice guy, right? Okay. Now I don't know him,
right?
Okay, but obviously he's I can admire what I admire what he's done. Apple as a company is great.
Yeah,
I think they've built some fantastic products, and the brand is fantastic. It's very difficult for me to say, oh, that person is my idol, or I don't know those people, right? Yeah. So from within, but what I did. And it took me a little while to realize this. I think around maybe after 8-9 years working, I really liked this gentleman who was kind of in the company I was at, National Instruments. He was the CTO.
Okay.
So I just went up to him and I said, "Would you mind?" His name is Keith, and I said, "Keith, would you mind having lunch one of these days?" And he said, "Yeah, sure." And we just went out for lunch. And and I asked him questions about like how he thinks about things, how he solves problems, and how he sees certain things within the company. And it came back, and I was like, well, that was a lot of learning that I had. So I said, like a month passed by. I said, Keith, would you mind having lunch again? And he said, yeah, sure, let's go. So we went again, and then it became a monthly ritual. Right. Okay, so unofficially, like. And then at some point, I just saw him as a mentor, right? Like I would go to him and I would say, and our conversations evolved, right? Like they evolved even beyond just work, and also even at work, it became like we could talk about things, knowing that
There's that safety net.
Like we could talk. Like I could ask him for advice. He was very open about how he saw certain things, and I really really enjoyed that relationship. Right. So just I think from a learning perspective, and Keith was just awesome and so helpful. Right. So I think you can find somebody like that. Like that is a lot more like meaningful for me. Right. I can say, oh yeah, like. I mean, I absolutely love and admire what Steve Jobs has done. There's plenty of other people, but what can I get out of that, right? So, but I think that one relationship meant a lot to me.
Yeah,
it still does. Yeah.
And it's also funny that you sort of mentioned Apple, as we were just conversing. So Steve Jobs has this thing called the reality distortion field, and that's when he pitches an idea to his team members. Or team members do that, and he sort of buys everybody into that.
Sure.
And lo and behold, some of our people have also said that you have that effect with them. What are your thoughts about that?
As a company, everybody has to be behind what we're doing.
Yeah.
Right. Only then can we effectively produce something that's of quality, and that's what I believe. So, and when you have the right people, then you're not shy of having these discussions, and even somebody telling you, no, this is wrong.
Right.
This is wrong. Okay, that's fine. Okay, then you suggest. Let's come up with come up with a better solution. And I've never claimed to have all the answers. I don't. I do have a lot of context because I get involved in a lot of different things within the company. So I think that's one advantage I have in my position. But I think there's some very smart people over here, and if they have a good idea, then we'll get behind it. I'll get behind it, right?
Yeah.
I mean, at the end of the day, that's what it's about. The best idea has to win. Absolutely. 200%. The best idea always has to win, right? Doesn't matter who's
pitching it.
Yeah, I mean, the person matters a lot. Who's pitching that, but it doesn't matter who it is.
As long as
and that's why everybody should. Now, I think the only thing that I would say is that again, think about it from the angle of what moves the needle. Like we're not looking to go past the like with the steam like the steam engines, right? Like you have the kind of the red zone where the pressure builds up too much. Like we're not trying to go into like or the RPM to like 10 or 9. What we're trying to do is, okay, how do we go from 2 to 3, 3 to 4, 4 to 5, 5 to 6, 6 to 7, right? And then when you hit 7, it's not about going to 8, it's about switching gears, right? So you scale up. So then now your status quo becomes, you come back to 2, so that's your new status quo, right? So you've achieved that level, right? So I think it's about shifting gears at the right time, building that acceleration and shifting gears so that you're not burning so much fuel, right? You understand, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
You're a cars guy. You should understand this analogy. Okay. I know we're big in cars. I'm not a car fan. Yeah.
I know. I've got that before.
So what I just shared with you is probably the extent of my knowledge on cars.
Yeah, fair enough. Yep. So this is just like a quick round. Just 3 words. So just the first thing that comes to your mind when you hear this word, and these are just emotions. So the first one, anger.
Control it.
Sad.
Don't be.
Happy.
Always be.
Obviously, all right. I think that's our time. But I just want to close the session by saying thanks a lot for taking the time to come here and just for doing this with us. And one thing, I think I can say this on behalf of everybody who's watching in Bayut and dubizzle. You don't have employees, you have fans. Like,
you're too kind. I am also a fan of a lot of people in the business, so I think that goes both ways. Yeah.
Thank you, sir. How do you feel being in the show that, so this is what we do?
Good. Keep doing it. I think you got probably more out of me in the last 30 minutes from a kind of a more of a personal angle than, I get the opportunity to share because, a lot of times it's just, we're talking business. So I'm glad we were able to talk about some of those things as well. Yep.
We hope you enjoyed that conversation with Haider. Stay tuned and I'll see you next time.